Originally, this video was only going to be about Kensuke Ushio and his sporadic but memorable involvement in anime series such as the recently released Netflix original Devilman Crybaby. Yet as I dove deeper into his background, discography, and musical influences, I couldn't help but notice a key group of creatives were popping up consistently throughout web pages and interviews relating to Ushio. I really tried to shake off my curiosity and keep the script within 1,000 words. Yeah, that didn't really happen. These weren't just artists and producers tangentially related to Ushio's music. They're some of his close friends and mutual inspirations. This video documents the rabbit hole I went down and the fascinating group of individuals I found that helped shape much of the Japanese techno, hip-hop, and synth music scenes. Agraph is a 34-year-old electronic composer and programmer based primarily in Tokyo. His style can be difficult to pinpoint, since it ranges drastically from solo piano to synthwave, but he carries obvious eccentricities into all of his work. One of these is noticeable chamber music attributes, adopted from the famous Dutch composer Simeon ten Holt. In Agraph's second album especially, this influenced tracks with an emphasis on piano, incorporating noise grain, distortion, random sound artifacts, soft guitar strings, unpitched percussion instruments, and a mixture between non-diegetic and diegetic sound sources, to deliver music that almost feels as if the notes are bleeding into each other. This extends to even his recent scores on Devilman Crybaby and Koe no Katachi, with one of my favourite examples being the OST titled Heartbeat. For this track, he actually placed a microphone inside the piano to capture that deep, raw quality. I don't know about you, but when I listen to this OST, I find myself imagining I'm inside the piano. Another characteristic stems from his experience using mixing and sampling equipment like Cubase, contrasting diegetic sounds such as bouncing ping pong balls against non-diegetic sounds like overlaying synth notes. For a good example of this, look no further than his track from Ping Pong the Animation titled Ping Pong Phase 2. It's pretty evident that his basics are grounded in techno, and this has helped expand his understanding of sound manipulation. In terms of his career history, his family was music-centered to say the least. Ushio describes his house as a music classroom, with his brothers playing electones, which are electric organs manufactured by Yamaha. It was quite the lively environment for a budding musician. Upon entering primary school, he had started fiddling around with a Yamaha B900, which is where he uncovered the mysteries of synthesizers. After graduating high school, Ushio was dropping in on budding filmmakers at university, asking for sound samples that he could experiment with. He had no money because every cent or yen was spent on new computers and synth equipment. This is something I can relate to at the moment, if you replace music equipment with less inspiring games and psychology textbooks. He began working as a producer and technical engineer for Ishino Takyu and the Disco Twins in their live performances, when he met Ishino at his hosted techno event, Stern. Being a big fan and all, Ushio was apprehensive about going up to this legend, but Ishino welcomed him with open arms. Within a month, Ishino had recruited Ushio as a technical engineer for Denki Groove, and behind the scenes was helping him in the creative process of producing his own songs. It was very much a Cinderella story. So what do you think people started to call him? Of course, it was Cinderella Boy. I don't really think he liked it all that much, but it stuck for at least a little while. Now, Ishino Takyu. He's someone that will come up a lot in this video. He's one of the most well-renowned DJs and techno producers in Japan, currently leading the underground synth-pop group Denki Groove, along with Pierre Taki, an awarded actor who often lends his vocal talents. Their musical style is based upon a huge cluster of influential genres and bands, but for the sake of succinctness, I'll attempt to summarize two defining elements. Firstly, Pop Will Eat Itself was a British pop band that sampled their favourite artists to create a sound less focused on the vocals and more concerned with the rhythms generated by these samples. Ishino didn't realise this was something musicians could even do. Secondly, the squelchy, bass-infused analog synths and echoing vocals from the acid house genre during the 1980s to the 1990s. These influences sparked a fire in both Ishino and Taki, which would lead to Denki Group's formation. But before they both decided to branch off into their own group, they were part of a radical, eclectic pre-new wave band called Zinsei in the 1980s. It was formed out of a desire to play witty, nonsensical music in the vein of Hovlaken, who are interesting. Okay, let me show you this. That's about all you need to know of them. Let's move on, shall we? Ishino would later go on to host All Night Nippon in the 1990s, a late-night radio show that gained popularity due to his charisma and eccentricities. It was popular with younger people, and this gave way to a new breed of Japanese techno fans, as he had a keen eye for techno music that could express how versatile the genre could be. His importance cannot be understated in a time period when many anime nerds were also becoming fans of techno. This gave birth to what is called the Ava generation by Ushio, a cultural crossover that engulfed Japanese teenagers. Yeah, if you couldn't tell by Ushio's soundtrack compositions in Devilman, Koi no Katachi, Ping Pong, and even the upcoming Liz and the Bluebird film, he's a big, self-titled otaku. Less so for Ishino. At 50 years of age, he wasn't a part of that generation, but he does enjoy animation, and funnily enough, he apparently would be very interested in an anime about polo. Ushio is really good friends with Ishino, and it's a blast watching them banter over Twitter on the odd occasion. In fact, his alias, Agraph, came from a gathering with a very drunk Ishino and Hiroshi Kawabe. Ushio was pondering over using the word graphic, or graph, because he liked the concept of visual elements becoming an icon for musicians. They sillily mentioned that it should be a graph, because of how his science-like nature contrasts against his inherent stupidity. Drunk suggestions aren't always the best. Ushio admits it doesn't make a whole lot of sense unless you take its other meaning, which refers to the string holders responsible for stabilizing pitch in pianos. It was a perfect fit considering the roots of his music trace back to piano. Though I'd be remiss not to discuss Kawabe at least a little further. He's a member of the hip-hop band Tokyo No. 1 Soul Set, but also founded a special unit called Inc. with Ishino. This older duo was formed because Ishino and Kawabe wanted to produce off-brand music that was experimental and dumb, harkening back to the days of Zinsei. This doesn't necessarily fit into their main lineup, so they can go all out wacky without fear of backlash for not living up to expectations. They don't give a shit, and I really love that. Speaking of collaborations, Ushio has utilized Yoshinori Tsunohara for mastering of his albums, though Ushio describes Yoshinori's involvement as more of a conceptual designer, often sending back his songs because he deeply understands what Ushio's intent was for the sound. If it didn't match that vision, Yoshinori would not accept mastering responsibilities. This implicit understanding of conceptual intentions makes sense considering Yoshinori's background. He's a DJ and club programmer that features predominantly in the Shibuya kei and chill-out genres. An interesting tidbit is that he's also quite known for being obsessed with aviation, incorporating airport samples and themes into most of his portfolio. It produces a rather unique sound, evoking Pan Am and the 1970s. I mean, what you're listening to right now is the track called Take Off, from an album literally titled Pan Am, The Sound of the 70s. I mean, it can't get more blatant than that. He really idealizes commercial flight, but also throws in the usual techno elements for good measure. I think his sound can be encapsulated by one of his best songs, called Tokyo Underground Airport. I'm gonna be honest, I started this video out of an appreciation for Agraph, but slowly found myself enjoying Yoshinori's albums the most. They're a little more energetic, reminding me of lo-fi hip-hop in that way that you're totally engaged while listening, but you can also leave it on in the background if you so desire. He was also an early member of Denki Groove, which gained enormous traction in European countries like Germany. Once he left for an entirely solo career in 1999, much of his fanbase followed him too. Nowadays, he mostly works on producing and mastering, probably polishing these skills on Ushio's A Day Phases album. That was his first time mastering after all, and it proved to change his trajectory as he grew older. Ushio's career path has similarly diverged, starting from humble beginnings as a live support programmer, assisting Denki Groove and Llama's performances. Mainly led by Koji Nakamura and Miki Furukawa, Llama was established after they split off from their previous rock band, Supercar, which were famous for mixing alternative rock music and techno music. And it's no wonder why when you realize that individuals like Agraph and Ishino Takuya had close working relationships with the band. Llama even remixed Denki Groove's song, Niji, in 2012. Now let's talk about the connection with anime. You might have noticed that I've been putting this topic off for a little while. That's simply because I wanted to introduce these figures irrespective of their involvement with secondary mediums like anime. After all, they're musicians first and foremost. Supercar's a band with plenty of experience writing songs for TV and film, composing and producing much of the soundtrack for the Eureka 7 anime series, and the live-action Ping Pong film. This was a collaborative effort, including the likes of Ishino Takuya and Yoshinori Kunihara on several OSTs. Agraph isn't credited, yet it's no wonder he would be recruited by Misaki Uasa for an anime adaptation of Ping Pong. Close relationships with members of Supercar like Miki Furukawa, plus the same record label as Supercar, Ishino Takuya and Yoshinori Tsunohara, plus programming support for Denki Groove and Llama, plus Yoshinori fulfilled the role of theme song composition and arrangement for the Tatami Galaxy, plus Yuasa loves hip-hop and synthwave. The stars align when looking at this information. Llama's debut song, Spell, was used for the opening of Number 6, a Neutemann A block anime, while their third single, Fantasy Cupid, was the ending theme for Ungo, a Bones-produced anime in 2011. Additionally, Parallel Sign was used as an insert song for the Eureka 7 AO anime series, once again reuniting Koji Nakamura and Miki Furukawa with the Eureka 7 property, after Supercar's original stint on the original anime. In terms of anime composition, Supercar and Llama are absolutely the most prolific. Obviously, the most recent is Ushio, as he composed the entire soundtrack for Devilman Crybaby and brought on Denki Groove to perform the opening theme, Manhuman. They also performed an insert song after a particularly heartbreaking episode. I think you all know the one I speak of. This reflects how Ushio's connections have built up and sustained a network of creators willing to lend a hand in cooperative efforts like TV productions. The live-action adaptation of Ping Pong featured a similar social environment, calling in many producers and artists on the soundtrack, such as Toa Tei and Yoshinori Tsunohara, because Supercar and Ishino Takuya were specifically working on it. It's these tight relationships that spawn some of the best anime and live-action soundtracks of all time. Of course, it helps that Ushio is quite selective when it comes to potential projects. only choosing to commit to directors that he truly respects. For instance, Naoko Yamada shared a close rivalry with Ushio, trying to outdo each other's ideas on Koe no Katachi. Yamada felt as if he propelled her to do better on the film because of his passion and attention to detail. They consistently met every week to produce a soundtrack containing visual elements that can trace a specific sequence of the film to a particular OST. The composition and pre-production were built up together in that regard. Masaki Uasa is a little different. In an interview translated by Sakaka blog, Uasa points out that he didn't have a particular mindset when it came to the soundtrack. Rather, he just wanted to make Ryu and Akira seem cool. That's it. I think this speaks more volumes about the trust between Ushio and Uasa than simply a lack of forethought. Lastly, I'd like to touch upon a relatively new group, comprised of a pretty stellar lineup of techno, synthwave, shibuya-kei, and hip-hop artists. Meta 5, of which the origins of the band's name references techno's label of Metapop by Harumi Hosono, a Japanese music legend who founded the rock bands Happy End and the ever-important Yellow Magic Orchestra. The latter, along with Ken Ishii, are key figures that kickstarted many of the artists I've been discussing. I don't want to go off on a tangent, but do let me know if you'd like content that dives deeper into their careers. And the long-running pop combo, Hiroshi and the Cool Five. Yukihiro Takahashi is the glue that holds this talented group together, with the original unit name cheekily being called Yukihiro Takahashi and the Cool Five. A large part of the reason I decided to cover more than just Ushio is because of this unadulterated stupidity that they all proudly embrace. It's this understanding that they're all getting past their prime, so why not have some fun playing music without any expectations? As you've probably connected by now, Ink also embodies this ideology. In essence, many of the artists and producers I've been discussing are old men in their 50s who've passed through the serious stages of their careers. Ushio is actually one of the exceptions, considering the 20-year age gap between his contemporaries. Among Takahashi, we once again have Yoshinori. Seriously, this guy pops up everywhere. Another member is Keigo Oyamada, or Cornelius, a recording artist and producer who co-founded Flipper's Guitar, is an inspiration for Ushio. As one of the founding fathers of shibuya-kei music, he developed a unique and quirky style before it was identified as its own genre. Yoshinori, who's only a year younger than Cornelius, has also remastered Cornelius' album, Phantasma. In line with the shibuya-kei genre, Tawate is another member of Meta 5, a DJ who's played a huge part in improving the demand for this type of music, and the interactions between industry socialites. In his venture in 2012, Hotel H, he sought to host live parties that gathered Japanese musicians from every scene imaginable. I'm unclear on whether this is still running, but I just wanted to highlight how individuals in this circle are not only goal-orientated towards contributing to Japanese music, but also the industry at large. A consistent idea I've been emphasizing throughout this video is that Ushio is merely a branching point. He's a newcomer compared to the others, who've had decades more experience. Ushio addresses them with a weight of seniority, but what I find interesting is how they mutually inspire each other, interacting in a tight friendship circle that has produced some of the greatest techno, hip-hop, rock and synthwave music in Japan. Ushio, in a sense, is a representation of all the youths that were influenced by these people, and how they've now come to forge their own unique paths. Lastly, I'd just like to note that I didn't cover all these artists equally, because I wanted to keep this video as succinct as possible. However, if anyone would like me to talk about people like Toate, Denki Groove, Harumi Hosono, Yukihiro Takahashi, Alva Noto, etc., please let me know down in the comments below.